Content capital, television with a difference. Sure, Michael Small here, flying solo, or am I? Well, we'll just wait and see. However, we start off the show with yours truly. Quite a lot is happening in the country, as it always is. The question is, are we so overwhelmed with interesting news? Let's use that turn of phrase. Interesting news. That we have very little leftover focus of our interests to take on any more interesting news. What am I speaking about? Well, not all of it is bad, but to get into the stories, let's kick off this morning's Daily Review. So the first thing that I would like to speak of today is the fact that legislation for polygraph testing, drug testing, and biometric identification for members of the protective services, as well as judicial and legal services and civil service officers, or the expansion therein, how it could be used, is on the agenda. And some of this legislation, at least I believe with regards to polygraph testing, was previously debated last year. And now there is a question with regards to how smoothly it might be instituted, because I believe this requires a 3/5 majority. There is no way to potentially cut this down and potentially water it down in order to just pass it with a simple majority. If my assumptions, well, not assumptions, I believe that was what was reported. I can't find that line specifically in the report. Now, the report in the daily newspaper did mention one of the opposition's comments when it was debated last year with regards to the science of polygraphing. Other items in the bill, drug testing and the use of biometric data, that seems to be a bit more straightforward. The question, of course, is if it's implemented well. There's still concerns about that, right? You could have a good idea if it's not implemented well. You have to secure the biometric data, the procedures of drug testing, so it's fair and objective, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, these are things that you potentially will want so that, one, you don't have to worry as much about people trying to fake being police in order to get to places they're not supposed to be able to get. It might not necessarily solve all of that problem. Recent events have caused the debates. I don't even know if the debate has restarted, but at least one former commissioner has weighed in on it over camouflage clothing. In his opinion, it's about people, falsely misrepresenting themselves as members of the defense force. I get that. Obviously you can't do that with neon camouflage. It is what it is. But this will still help safeguard secure areas, and it will just make fraudulent activity more difficult. It also, with biometric testing, potentially will, I don't know if they have it instituted. I know in one ministry or government office, fingerprint scanners were vandalized because you can't clock in for a co-worker if it requires your fingerprint. So there is also that. This is potentially something that public sector should look into. More on that later. But polygraph, the science was against polygraphing. Polygraph testing has limitations. It's called a lie detector test. It doesn't actually detect lies. It detects biometric data, your pulse rates, your heart rate, so on and so on. It can detect when you're nervous. Just because you're nervous doesn't mean you're lying. Usually if you see any polygraph testing, you know that they will have a few questions for a baseline. And one of the things is the baseline will help determine, hey, is this person nervous right now, or what have you? Or to what extent do they respond to stressful questions, if at all? One of the procedural things is when it comes to investigations, you kind of have to know what to ask Otherwise, you can't just randomly throw questions there. It would be ridiculous, and it's not going to cause the potential suspect to get nervous and give you an indicator that, hey, I lied about this answer, because you need a direct question first. Now, with regards to police testing, you could use it in a much more indirect manner, where you, with regards to certain officers that have high responsibilities, like police, like defense force personnel, like Ministry of National Security personnel, you could use it to establish their trustworthiness. But even that, it's used in that way. It's part of, I guess, the interview process. And then, of course, you could do subsequent testing for investigations afterwards, etc., etc. But to use it in that way, right, to use it to vet, well, not to vet people, but to use it in the hiring process in that way, because we're not talking about a special purpose unit now. I think we're talking a bit more broadly, and that's why this legislation is a bit more demanding. And what would that mean now? Because it also has some implications for the hiring and firing, and then those procedures have to change. And our labor market tends to be very, or judicial system tends to be very pro-labor. It'll be interesting to see how this could go out, but more importantly, how many days has it been since we heard about crime talks then we stopped hearing about it? So if this bill requires special majority vote to pass, is that right, as the report does state, will the opposition support it? Will this be an indicator that the opposition is just opposing for the sake of opposing? All right, I'll leave that one there. Next story, is about back to the DPP's office that was never occupied. So was it really the DPP's office? Well, technically that's the building that the government rented for that purpose. And now this goes now to the question of accountability, because this is a very strange case. Yesterday I wasn't very clear in my words, and I did not say everything I wanted to say yesterday. What I wanted to say was we need to look back at the paper trail to see the process of how it was determined this building was selected and then paid for with a 3-year lease. I can't remember if it was leased year to year, if it was 3 years up front, and that's why the government was stuck paying the lease until the 3 years were over, despite the fact that the building was not occupied for its intended purpose. Because the implication is the government signed the contract, the owner of the building is under no obligation to make any sorts of amendments to the deal once the contract was signed. I can't remember, well, I can't remember exactly the status on that. But the long and short is, what was the process to select this building? Here's the thing, the DPP, no one has authority to tell the DPP what to do with regards to his job, right? Who to prosecute, if to prosecute, if to charge someone, etc., etc. That's all up to him, independent. But he doesn't have independence with regards to his budget. And if the government is technically responsible for his office space, his budget, etc., etc., there's this weird HR no man's land for me with regards to now who is responsible for the wasted money. That's what I meant. Now, the Minister of Public Administration, she said there was no corruption involved. And you know what? I'm willing to believe that. I'm willing to believe that in the sense of, you know, don't rush to attribute to malice what could be attributed to incompetence. And I say incompetence, and I don't mean that, you know, the government was incompetent when it did this. It's not clear who's at fault. To what extent was the DPP involved in the process? And then to what extent should he be? And then to what extent is it written or mandated that he should be? And how practical is his involvement in the process, if any? Because, you know, it's part of the legislators for the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary to meet. But just because it says you have to meet doesn't mean that the meetings are practical and there's a whole host of... It's still kind of up in the air on how effective those meetings are. And you're meeting, you're talking, doesn't mean that they have to come to an agreement on things, and those agreements have to be instituted as agreed to in the meeting. They're just meeting. They're just talking. So the DPP could be consulted, but, you know, at the end of the day, that doesn't mean his opinion has to be considered. It all depends on how it's framed, how it's structured. And that's the question. And that's why I said yesterday, you know, depending, he might have done the right thing, but depending on how the process went, he might still be in some hot water. But the flip side is, I could very well see, and I think it's most likely, that even though the process was done correctly, it wasn't, well, it wasn't done correctly, for lack of a better way to say it, right? It wasn't done properly. Because on some level, the DPP's concerns should have been figured out before telling him, go here. And if his concerns were voiced and ignored, that's a problem. If he had no concerns and then wanted to come after the fact, that also is a problem. And then where do you go from here? Because that's an independent office, and I have no idea how that's to be controlled. And I think this is a case similar to the Caesar situation where, look, I understand what the rule is and what you're trying to prevent and what precedent you're trying to stop, but at the same time, you can't leave gray areas now for the independent office holder to not potentially be held into account. That said, in this situation, I actually don't have any reason to think that the DPP is at fault. I'm just presenting the possibility. At the end of the day, the public service has a lot of questions with regards to efficiency that the various sectors of the population and quarters of the population has. So much so that Public Administration Minister Alison, she said that there are things in place to increase the level of performance. And to be fair, we have seen that in isolation, in limited manners across certain ministries or operations, etc. But to say that certain things like the service commissions, like the big issues, would be solved, if they were the Prime Minister, wouldn't give us his kind of half-cocked solution, which has its own potential issues. But I'll leave that there. The last thing I want to speak about quickly before we take the break, I just want to point out this unnecessary back and forth between the THA and the NCC. Now, to be fair to the THA, I do believe, and I could be wrong, this started with reports yesterday about the chairman of the NCC, Gypsy, basically complaining how we didn't like Tobago Carnival, it could have been better if we were involved. And now the THA has basically said, well, we did ask you to be involved and you never actually did anything. You know, you didn't actually respond in any meaningful way to our requests for assistance in order to do things. Basically, somebody potentially is lying here because their statements are quite contradicting, right? I don't think they could both be true at the same time. Because THA is saying we did ask, NCC saying they didn't ask. My point is, this is completely useless. Completely useless. And I will say this, I don't know what Gypsy was thinking. To me, it doesn't make him look any better. Because at the end of the day, I could be wrong, but it seems as though he brought up this controversy. He could have just been diplomatic and answered the questions about Tobago Carnival without bringing up the fact that he felt left out. And to be fair, my initial thought when I saw that was, yes, why would I care to bring you in? Just look at Carnival after Easter in Trinidad. The best things about it are the parts of it that are private. The government-run parts of it are loss-making. Tobago is trying to do this in order to revitalize its private sector. You're not a part of the area that Tobago is interested in for the most part. So it is what it is, right? It's unnecessary. I don't know why this is a thing. I do find this is rather foolish. At the end of the day, we don't need one more thing to cause any sort of division between Trinidad and Tobago. Why? Why? Because somebody is hurt that his little fief does not extend to the sister isle? All right, fine, whatever. Handle your own stories before you want to judge other people. Let's take a break. When we come back, we welcome my co-host. Stay tuned.
Alan's Funeral Home, Tunapuna. Relax. We know the loss of a loved one can be challenging, but we've got your back for all your funeral needs, from documents to the service and or burial. Let Alan's Funeral Home take care of you and your loved ones. We are located on the Eastern Main Road in Tunapuna. Call us today at 663-1829 or visit allansfuneralhome.com. Alan's Funeral Home. Let us take care of business.
Let the home store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
From Maracas Bay to Arafita Avenue and Piaco, Richard's Bake and Shark brings the world's most popular fish sandwich closer to you. Open daily at all our locations.
My name is Carl Media. I am the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
From Maracas Bay to Arafita Avenue and Piaco, Richard's Bake and Shark brings the world's most popular fish sandwich closer to you. Open daily at all our locations.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen. And I know last week there were a lot of fruitless promises given to you, good people. But valued viewers, once again, I present the one and only Mr. Keaton Shaw.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning to all of you. I'm very pleased to be here once more and happy to be back in the original seat of which I've sat in. Seat of which I've sat in. What else do you do in a seat?
The first seat that you sat on this set, I do believe, was this one.
No, you can have that. That's fine.
Then the first seat that you originally sat on was over there, off in yonder.
Oh yes, in our second studio, smaller studio. My, that was quite some time ago. Wow, what was the name of that show? Breakfast with Keaton and
breakfast.
Join us for breakfast. B&B.
Right. Yeah. Don't careful with that joke. People might actually think you forgot the name of your old fish show.
No, I remember and I remember the first episode of Talking Points as well. I remember the 100th episode of Talking Points, and now here I am sitting on the umpteenth episode of Talking Point.
Yeah, I'm sure the editors have the count. I've lost track. I can't remember the 100th episode, to be honest. It just is what it is. We're like 300 plus episodes in at this point, easy.
Oh no!
Oh no, five
than that.
Past 5, right?
More than that. We are doing this show for probably the over 2 years now. Over 2 years, I would think so. You know, given the timeline and if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah. And it's like, what, 250 odd episodes a year, give or take?
Yeah, so it's plenty.
It's plenty. Yeah. All right. Let's just get into some topics. It's been a while since, we've been able to speak about some stuff. And you and I, I think we have different sides of this school violence story, where you've noticed something with regards to ongoing school violence. But for me, it was the fact that now a parent has entered into the fray with a troubled student, the parent of a troubled student. And the implications of this is potentially widespread. I'll just start off by saying, I think this is just one more example where the sanctity of law and order is being eroded slowly but surely. We could say the vandalism of religious spots. We could say, the fact that children are being targeted by murder. But now parents coming into the school and hitting principals with water bottles. What's next?
That's the thing. So the law exists. There is no order. And in regards to the laws that exist, many of them are outdated or simply not enforced. I am dissatisfied with any member of the Trans-Tobago Police Service suggesting that if we were to enforce all laws in TNT, half the population might be in remand or in jail. As far as I'm concerned, and I've said it before, enforcing the basic laws, the very basic, will start to create, if you start from the ground up, will start to create some level of discipline and that attitude of, I can't necessarily get away. But here you have a parent of a student from St. Madeleine Secondary School going to meet with the principal and a teacher last week after the student of the child of the parent was suspended for marijuana possession and appeared in court last week. So the parent goes to meet to discuss the suspension, and for whatever reason, whatever was said in that meeting clearly became enraged and attacked the teacher suffering bruises.
The principal.
Well, yes, my apologies, the principal, also a teacher, but the principal. Yeah. But nevertheless, it is, I have a couple of questions to begin with. One, I am aware that on any school compound there's at least one security guard. Many instances, given the school population, there are more than one security guards available. Now, I get that sometimes in such instances or situations it's extremely difficult, but I was wondering whether or not security on the compound could have had any sort of intervention in reprimanding the parent whilst police came, because now police are searching for said individual.
Think about it, right, when you went to school. Think about a parent meeting with a principal, probably in the principal's
No,
office,
I'm
right?
not saying that the security has to be present. I'm saying that the first course of action, now every school is set up differently. I don't know exactly how the offices or how school administration is placed.
If the security could have taken the parent into custody.
Given the schools, at least that I know of and I'm aware of, and how things are set up, it would have been very easily to get security to intervene. But then again, you don't know the circumstances. So let me not just say, it's just something I'm putting out there for thought.
Because I could see where, like, school security, it's just, you're not anticipating that, right? I don't know if you have, like, back in the day, it's not as though we had, like, walkie-talkies for the security and you know, and we had a kind of comm system, right, to say, well, intercept that person before they escape. Not that you can't get the security to do it. I just think, like, you're not set up to do it well, potentially.
So the thing is, the next thing I'm pointing out is this student, this said student, had apparently, according to the news article, 20 suspensions on their file. 20 suspensions. They were still in the school system after 20 suspensions. The school I attended, after 2 suspensions, is most likely going to be expelled. 20 suspensions. So is it that
I've actually never seen anybody be suspended to the point of expulsion, so I have no idea what the limit is.
So 20 suspensions, that means that you are home or on the streets more than you are in the actual classroom.
It could just be, some of them could just be for a day.
Regardless of whether or not it's for a day, the mere fact that they've taken the step to suspend the student
20 times, yeah,
explains, 1, the behavioral challenges associated with the student, 2, the extent to which these behavioral challenges have led to circumstances, of course, that led to suspension being the disciplinary action, and then 3, given the actions of the parent, no wonder the student felt as though in times when I was doing wrong, it was okay. Because if this parent acted this way in the school, I don't know how the parent is acting at home. And apart from which, the example that said parent is setting, not only for that child, but for others within the household, clearly that student just said, you know what, to heck with it. So going back to what one parent of a student who got expelled a couple weeks ago said, you know, don't blame the child, we always try to do our best. If you do some background research into said parent's relationship with such a daughter, you would realize, hold up, I'm not going to take on that parent at all. And it comes back to this example, again, this parent...
Oh, the parent said, don't blame me.
Don't blame me, we try to do our best.
Right.
I look at this particular case and be like, all right, now I understand a lot more.
This case makes me think that the person who might still have some culpability, but the least culpability is the student himself. And to me, it goes back to, okay, what are the school systems doing? Why is it not working? What is the parent, more importantly? Because parenting at home can undermine whatever school wants to do, right? And vice versa.
Sure, the school system, based off of the fact that this student had 20 suspensions on file, which is astounding, tells me that the systems that are in place are actually supporting delinquency. Now, in my opinion...
Yeah, explain that.
In my opinion, I actually hate the fact that a student has to be expelled. But I also recognize and understand that disruptive behavior is going to prove to be counterproductive, especially for other students within a classroom setting.
Right.
And it can also be dangerous for teachers, given of what we've seen over the last couple weeks, couple years. So I always felt strongly, I took a stance against expulsion, but I also recognize at times when there's a need for it. If there are other systems in place, because you put this student with this disciplinary challenges out of the school system and they end up on the street, what's going to happen after that? That is probably a contributing factor to the state of which TNT currently finds itself in. But beyond that, because the school system is just warehouses, and I say supporting delinquency, 20 suspensions and nothing more is being done about it. The student is allowed back in the school system, suspended again, back in the school system, suspended again. So I then say, okay, what is the Minister of Education Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly saying about this? And her response in 2 instances is that the school, like all others, is subject to the National School Discipline Matrix, and student infractions are handled accordingly. Taking a look at school discipline, she spoke to a media outlet via telephone saying there is a discipline matrix that guides the Ministry of Education's treatment with infractions. These matters are dealt with on a case-by-case basis depending on the gravity of the action and the disciplinary history of the student. These are unfortunately not new circumstances. They're not new circumstances. They're circumstances which are just evolving to get worse. And you have not even given any information on what the disciplinary matrix is, because you most likely have no clue what the matrix is. And apart from which, you says these are matters that are dealt with on a case-by-case basis depending on the gravity of the action and the disciplinary history of the student. Here you have an example of a student with 20 suspensions on file. So if we're looking at it by a case-by-case basis, my question to you is, Honorable Minister, is it that you're telling me that the disciplinary matrix does not address all these concerns, that the disciplinary matrix is faulty, that the disciplinary matrix is only actually supporting delinquency? Because I am taking the minister's words and I'm taking what we're seeing as an example from this student who was in court last week for marijuana possession, and this parent who attacked the principal. And I'm thinking to myself, hold up, does nobody else see the mess that we're in?
Keithan, it gets even worse when you consider what is the culture of our law breaking, right? That's the best way I could come up with it. The culture of our law breaking is jail is not stopping people from committing crimes. So if jail, if incarceration, if the suspension of your freedoms and to some extent your rights is not going to give you pause to commit crimes, why, oh why, will suspension in schools, because there's concerns about gang recruitment within schools. There's concerns about students being influenced by that sort of culture out there, you know, despite the best efforts of educators and other stakeholders trying to influence and mentor them. At the end of the day, as Kemiel said, you know, and then you go back to the home environment, and if it's a bad one, it might just wipe away everything. What is suspensions in the face of that? Because basically what you're telling delinquent students is, hey, you see all that you did? Take a vacation. Because the culture is already setting up people to say, listen, I don't care about the punishment. I don't care if I get in prison. I don't care if I get the death penalty. I don't care if the police are hunting after me. I will still break the law. So now, at the younger scale of it, what is a suspension? So what is a suspension going to do? That isn't going to turn them off from anything.
Clearly it hasn't. Clearly it hasn't. So you've got 3 tiers here, and this is nothing new. This is not to say that we are preaching something which is new to people's ears. Everybody in TNT is aware of it. Many choose to ignore it.
I would say that there will be some people who might not have grasped at some point, if not already or still, that, listen, for a student to care about suspensions, the parent has to care and or the student has to care. And in this case, it seems as though the parent and the student does not care about suspensions. So this is a tool that's meaningless.
So here's what's going to happen. We already know that there's a breakdown in the home. We already know that there's a breakdown in society. And we have understood that there is a breakdown in the education system.
Yes.
It's nothing new. And need I say that the Minister of Education, as much as, you know, a very nice lady, and they all are very nice, and, you know, you meet her and you speak to her, very pleasant, you want to interview her, all right, cool. The thing is, she has done nothing to improve the education system here in Trinidad and Tobago.
I will say this to some extent.
Hold on, every year, Sean, you want to know, if you go and ask the minister what her success has been in this position, what is she going to respond? To ensure that schools are open and operating. Nevertheless, half the schools in Trinidad and Tobago are falling down.
Now, I'll say this, it's not all up to her, right? Some of it is up to her. She has some authority as the minister, but this is a cabinet-wide thing. And I would also argue that this is a this is a serious deficiency of our political environment, because I feel this is something that successive governments to some extent ignored or didn't take into consideration, proper consideration. It's all nice when you build schools, maybe they might be finished, maybe they might not be, but photo opportunity, right? But to say you're gonna fix things like curriculum and discipline, etc., there's no photo opportunity in that.
Sean,
or at least there wasn't before.
Let me tell you something, even if you're saying it's cabinet, you're the line minister, so you're doing an absolutely terrible job at even public relations, because you'd come out and simply say, you come out and simply say, well, listen, we have presented these recommendations before cabinet and we're waiting their approval. Nothing in that context. And apart from which, you've shown that there is some level of understanding. If it is that we've had consultations on SE, now we're expanding the subject a little bit, but we're showing how the Ministry of Education has acknowledged, in some instances, the issues of the education system whilst not doing anything about it. So acknowledging and acting is two different things, right? You've had consultations on SC. You're having consultations in regard to the Concordat. I can't understand where is the action. So again,
they have consultations on their syllabus and the education system in general, and what came out of that was we have 4-month students that can't write their own name.
So we see and we understand why it is that there is a breakdown in regards to students as well and students' behavior. Because what was going to happen now? This student probably ends up in YTC, and you never know, that may lead to either rehabilitation or that may lead
Is it still against the law for students not to be in school? Is there truancy laws?
Yes, students who are under the age, as far as I'm aware, I'm due to be correct on this, and this is a conversation I'm having recently. Students under the age of 18 actually are still supposed to be in school, right? So by the way, if ever you see children on the highway whose parents are sitting under the trees and shade while these little children are selling
definitely
and whatnot, don't get me wrong, I understand the socioeconomic circumstances, I understand that. But that is an example of how society is breaking down and falling apart. It's an example. It may not necessarily be the fault of the parents, but it goes to show how we are feeling overall.
Depending, if the parent is spending most of the day sitting while the child is selling water on the highway, I'm pretty sure that's not socioeconomic needs, or I need my child to work so I could relax.
So what's going to happen now? There's a chain reaction to this entire thing. If this student is found guilty, maybe sent to YTC, remember, and given the fact that they haven't named the child, means that the child is obviously still under the age of 18 years old. There are students within the secondary school setting who are above the age of 18 years old, by the way. But apart from that, if they are charged, found guilty, go to YTC, what happens there? Does that lead to rehabilitation? When they come out, what happens next? Is it that they change their life, or is it that they go back into the same society that led them there in the first place? Following which, is it that they lead to a life of crime afterwards, or is it that we try to find our way? It's all dependent again on so many factors. But let's just say that they do find their way and they become a productive member of society, and that's all well and good. No problem, you made mistakes in the past, fair enough. But then if you somehow end up in the same household with this parent as an example as to how adults are children that are feeling their own children, you move to say that this child then ends up in the prison system. Taxpayers' money goes into facilitating such a system which allows the child to remain there. Possible criminality comes out of the system, can't necessarily find a job or work, goes back into a life of crime. Or guess what? It's a strain on society as well, because social services will have another applicant for grants or for this payment or for that payment. And that is my problem here in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a chain reaction, and we're not sorting it out at the root. And that this alone leads to so many different infringements upon. You want to hear an alarming statistic? Not to go off too much, right? I learned that Trinidad and Tobago, roughly 54 to 56% of those leaving Trinidad and Tobago are skilled, meaning that they have a secondary education or more. So they're well qualified. That tells me that young people who are remaining in Trinidad and Tobago, Many of them are not in that category of skill. Many of them are not getting that education. Many of them cannot necessarily contribute productive-wise in terms of nation building or nation development. And yet here we are, just allowing it to happen. It's falling apart before your very eyes. And you mean to look at me and tell me that there's a matrix that is in place. We deal by it on a case-by-case basis, depending on the severity of the infringements. And I'm here like, hold on, wait a second. Soon children might be bringing guns to school and they'll be suspended for 2 days. If teachers walk off the job, which might be the next thing, what are we going to say then?
Well, hold on. This is the thing. I think people might not be fully aware of the education system and how vast the issues are, right? And how many there are. First of all, it was reported there's a shortage of teachers. Then, depending if you have a child, if your child is in an unlucky situation, you might be fully aware of the unproductive teachers or the ineffective teachers. And we're not talking about teachers who have good results with students' exams, but rather contact hours, the amount of work that the teachers put in. If the student is just incapable, that's fine. But to the extent that the teacher is being productive in their job. Then there's budget shortfalls for just to fund operating schools. Then there's budget shortfalls for renovations and construction of schools. Then there, of course, there's the school violence and the discipline problem. Then there is what I consider an issue that might be underestimated, the lack of guidance counseling. To kind of tell students, hey, this is what the opportunities are here, here, and here, right? These universities, we've had students with success. These are the jobs available in TNT that you could look out for, that you could potentially plan your tertiary education around, or you get this degree to go abroad, right? Stuff like that. And then I have serious questions, and I don't know how widespread it is, with regards to deficiencies in the syllabus. I know that the Ministry of Education was changing the syllabus for primary school, or certain grades of primary school, every year, to the point where it was just adding more and more of a workload as teachers had to essentially work out the changes, right? Because each year is the first year of the new changes that they have to figure out how best to now teach their students with the changes to the syllabus. And it was causing an effectiveness issue, right? And it was causing the teachers to have to spend a lot of time. These are the ones that are dedicated to their job, by the way. But to what extent do we have a syllabus deficiency in general? Because when a Form 1 student cannot read, 7 years of primary education, right? Give or take. You know, preschool, all of that jazz, right? You can't read. How are you even allowed to set SEA if you can't read, if you can't write your own name? So the education system has issues right across the board. I don't even know if any single administration could untangle this Gordian knot of a problem. And it's feeding into deficiencies in the public sector, our crime situation, our lack of professionalism in the workplace in general, our lack of competitiveness in international markets. It's feeding into all of that.
Well, actually, the fact that 54 to 56% of those leaving Trinidad are skilled tells me that if we were able to make TNT more appealing to our own citizens, then guess what? We can definitely be competitive. We are making TNT very appealing to criminals and criminal minds and criminal intent.
We don't have a private sector to offer a robust selection of jobs. There are certain industries where if you get into them, you could be okay. And if you're not suited for that, this is not like other areas in the world where you could be in various service industries and have a good living. It's very narrow.
So I always say be careful what you say on air. And I just made a comment in regards to making it appealing. And that's not me encouraging criminals to come to Trinidad, you know. I'm just saying criminals realize what's taking place here in TNT.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody realizes what's taking place here in TNT, where there's been a complete breakdown and failure in the system. That's why criminals get away. You have people committing crimes without wearing face masks anymore, looking blatantly in cameras, and not giving a damn, not caring at all. And that is precisely what I mean about appealing. Because I could get away with it. I could do whatever once I get away with it. And apart from which, I am also taking a look at this thing holistically. And I'm just wondering now, in a nonsensical manner, I'm trying to find the words to actually, you know, what's the most suitable way. But here, listener Sean, if we were to actually have people being charged for just being ignorant or for plain and simple being stupid, what's going to happen to society, boy? What's really going to happen? It's frustrating for me that I'm looking at this parent who made threats. The police came to the school. The parents had long gone left and was allowed to leave. Again, allowed to leave. You have security that has the authority to reprimand the parent. I've seen that taking place before. And here you are, parent making threat and leaving the school. And now there's a manhunt on.
You do realize, though, that, again, they are going to be, now, not all teachers are bad. There are a significant amount of teachers that keep the system going so it doesn't collapse. Same thing with the police. But could you imagine, Keaton, you've had some interactions with police, right? Charge people with ignorance, then there will be many a police officer who could potentially be charged for ignorance as well, for this type of behavior.
No, but that's fine. Sean, that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care what is your rank or status in society. I don't care about the position or the office that you hold, right? To me, and let's be honest with you, you have some really ignorant people who cannot put a sentence together and who lacks complete knowledge of the field or discipline of which they sit in, that position. So to me, it doesn't matter. If you are one, proving yourself to be counterproductive, while it's just collecting a salary, you shouldn't be there. 2, if you're failing in your responsibilities and duties, you should not be there. 3, if in any form or fashion you are breaking the law, you should not be there. And whether or not you're a police officer, whether or not you're a government minister, whether or not you hold any high position in a ministry, if you are to clean up the nonsense here in TNT, it starts from there as well. But I could tell you one thing, it also starts by enforcing the basic things. Parking on the main road, no problem. Breaking a red light, no problem. Anything else in regards to small
Did you see what happened with the pharmacy situation where illegal or unapproved drugs, but some of these things are benign things like Vicks. We're not talking antibiotics, right? But they were confiscated, right? Or quarantined, which I assume is just don't touch it, leave it right there anywhere else or whatever. That's what I assume it is. I've never heard that term before.
I wonder if that might end up in the public health system. I wonder.
No, but here's the thing. Technically speaking, the authorities follow the law, right? And this is one of the things that comes back to the point. Part of me is like, well, listen, you'll need to know what is approved and not approved so you don't get your hands caught there. I know that it's a minor creature. It's not, it really doesn't mean anything. But this is one of those things where I'm sure there's a lot of situations like this where a lot of small things slip through the cracks and we take it for granted. How much of our country operates on that? So if we want to all of a sudden cut the flow, we need to be prepared, which I don't think you're wrong for saying. Let's operate properly and not just allow these small things to slip through the cracks.
Right, using that as an example, and that's a fine example. There is a shortage, and the Minister of Health will deny this, but you speak to people who actually go to the hospitals, because speak to the people who actually have to go and collect CDAP, and they will tell you that it's very difficult for them to get drugs. I've heard doctors complaining, and I've heard of doctors complaining as well, that they cannot get the drugs that are necessary to treat their patients because for whatever reason here in TNT. But you're right. It's all well and good that they've enforced the laws, that they've had these raids and that they have confiscated these drugs. Whether or not these drugs are deemed illegal or whether or not they didn't come through the distributor or distribution field is
they
a different
pass through
thing.
customs, by the way. Huh?
And that is where I'm getting to. That's exactly where I'm getting to. So you have these raids, you confiscate these drugs. How they pass through custom in the first place? Because people might, hold on, you have to understand, Sean, in some instances, I might not even be bringing this in on a container, I might just be walking through the airport with a suitcase of it, and I walk through this line, nothing to declare. Do you know, let's use an example of a destination Trinidad travel to a lot. London Gatwick.
Oh, I was thinking New York, but
No,
okay. Yeah, New York, both were.
Yeah. You know, if you walk through that nothing to the clear line, they still have sniffer dogs there who are walking around all the time.
But Keaton, the implication of how it was reported says, no. It went through customs.
How many things?
It wasn't any nothing to the clear line. It went through scrutiny, Keaton, and
oh, that one I did not hear.
Right?
I'm glad you're telling me.
I don't know if it was like if somebody went into the container and searched everything, right? But the point is, it was available. It was available to be checked, right?
Yeah,
That's the implication, right?
Officer, listen.
It wasn't sneaked through, as far as I'm aware. It wasn't sneaked through the border.
Officer, let me go now. Let me go, please now. I'll give you 2 pack of Vicks and you know, vapor rubs. Good for you. You know, take it.
So, I mean, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, right? I said that about when you have squatters on gas pipelines and they get in electricity and water attached to buildings on a property that's not supposed to be on that land. Here's the thing, though, and we have to close with this. So this might be an ongoing question I have for you, but consider this. Is our political environment prepared to solve these problems? Because look how deep it is just with the education ministry alone. Look how deep it goes. Are we willing to solve? Because I think the budget that was presented this year, like last year, isn't really solving anything. It's just allowing problems to fester because they don't want to commit, they don't want to compromise anything to make a concerted effort to try to solve one of the major issues of which we have many.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, because we have to go for news on the hour, I have hope for young people here in TNT, and a lot of them have very good ideas, and I don't want them to get caught up in the political narrative. But you also have these instances of career politicians who sat in positions for 20 plus years.
But and we've seen some new politicians fall into that trap already.
As far as I'm concerned, that's what I said. I hope they don't fall into that trap.
But
as far as I'm concerned, when you have these individuals sitting in these positions for 20 plus years, and there's a constant breakdown in society, and everybody's complaining and recognizing what's going wrong, yet when it comes to an election, they are the greatest thing for Trinidad and Tobago. Never mind what they did in the last 5 years, or never mind what they did when they were in office during this period. No. And that part of it is the mindset aspect of it. So going back to personal responsibility, sometimes Trinidad and Tobago, you have nobody else to blame but yourselves. Honestly speaking, you really don't have it, because I can blame the government for only so much, and I blame the government for a lot because they haven't set an example and they haven't corrected things that they are responsible and charged with correcting. But in the instances where you have parents who are children or parents who are just ignorant, and it's falling on the children, you're setting a wrong example, and look what's taking place. But then again, who cares? Who cares in Trinidad? It seems as though nobody has a conscience anymore. Nobody has a conscience.
I'll just say, the ship is sinking, and we're still debating whose party is the greatest. I kind of don't see the point, but...
The ship is sinking?
The ship is sinking.
It's true. The ship probably had no gas to begin with, so let's just take a break for news on the hour. This is your WESN News on the Hour. Thank you for joining us. Here are the headlines. 5-year-old girl left in hot car in critical condition. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez refutes ransomware attack claims on TSTT. Law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics. In regional news, magnitude 5.4 earthquake rattles near Hope Bay in Jamaica. With the details, I'm Keaton Shaw. Superior authorities have launched an investigation into a harrowing incident that unfolded on Sunday, where a 5-year-old girl was discovered trapped in a locked car for several hours, now battling for her life in critical condition at a local hospital. Initial reports indicate that the child's mother had entrusted her care to a relative while she attended a funeral. The 41-year-old mother had arranged for a female relative to accompany her daughter and other children to the funeral service. The distressing turn of events occurred around 4 p.m. when the mother returned from the funeral, encountered the relative but noticed the absence of her daughter. Inquiring about the child's whereabouts, the relative shockingly revealed that she had left the 5-year-old unattended in the vehicle. The child was found inside the car in an unconscious state, covered in vomit and urine. Quick action was taken to rush the young girl to the Sapara District Health Facility, where she received initial treatment before being transferred to the San Fernando General Hospital. Her condition grew dire as she was moved to the intensive care unit to the resuscitation room. Medical assessments have since revealed the gravity of the child's condition, which includes severe dehydration with potential heat stroke, possible aspiration pneumonia, and suspected hypoxic brain injury. The incident has sparked both public concern and the ongoing investigation by local law enforcement. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez has categorically denied allegations of a ransomware attack on the telecommunications services of Trinidad and Tobago. The reports of this breach initially surfaced 3 days ago when tech journalist Mark Lindesay, writing on his website technewstt.com, highlighted the incident. In his article, Lindesay cited falconfeeds.io, a cybersecurity firm known for reporting breaches via its Twitter feed, which claimed that tsttt.co.tt and bmobile.co.tt had fallen victim to the breach. The reported haul included 6 GB of customer lines, ID scans, GitLab projects, and database dumps. Over the weekend, falconfeeds.io identified ransomware group RansomX as the perpetrators behind the attack. However, Minister Gonzalez refuted these claims, stating, open quotations, "It is not true," end quotations, during a brief interview. He also mentioned that TSTT will release an official statement on the matter in due course. Mark Lindesay, in a newsletter report, expressed concerns regarding the seriousness of RansomX's reported breach of telecommunication services of Trinidad and Tobago's data, emphasizing the public remains largely unaware of the full extent of the incident. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service supported members of the Special Olympians on Sunday during the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics along the North Coast Road. The TTPS, united with servicemen and women, the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, hosted the largest public awareness vehicle and grassroots fundraiser for the Special Olympics, which is also known as Guardians of the Flame. During the run, law enforcement members and Special Olympics athletes carried the flame of hope into the opening ceremony of local competitions and into Special Olympic state, national, regional and world games. Annually, more than 100,000 dedicated and compassionate law enforcement members carry the flame of hope, symbolizing the courage and celebration of diversity, uniting communities around the globe. In regional news, Hope Bay, Jamaica experienced a noticeable seismic event on Monday as an earthquake with a magnitude of 5.4 struck the area, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Thankfully, there have been no immediate reports of significant damage resulting from the quake. The USGS reported the earthquake occurred at a depth of 10 kilometers below the Earth's surface. Following the seismic activity, Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness took to social media to express his concern for the safety of the population. That's news to the hour on WESN and Keaton Shaw. Thank you for watching. We'll have more for you at the top of the hour.
Since they were on sale, Laura bought these umbrella shoes without thinking. Literally, without thinking. Hungry for deals? You'd better come and satisfy it at KFC before doing something crazy. Wow Bucket. 7 pieces of chicken and 4 regular sides for $115. A finger-licking good deal.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And believe it or not, there were a lot of other things that we wanted to talk about, both the daily review before Keaton joined me, and when Keaton joined me, we had more than one topic, and that one topic was so vast, just to wrap our heads around it took up the entire time. Now, at the end of the day, if you didn't hear anything that you wanted to speak about, you could call in and talk about that. If you want to contribute with regards to the topics that we did speak about, you could call in about that. Have any questions for us, call in, feel free. The number should be on your screen. Of course, Keaton Shaw is still with me here, Talking Points. Sean and Keaton, Keaton and Sean, dynamic duo back together.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Well, as we wait for calls, because it tends to start slow these last few days and then goes real fast. I don't know if we were talking about it off air, but just as a quick thing, I don't understand the story about the child that was left in the van for, it's reported to be 2 hours. I just don't understand it. The child was left unattended in a car, unventilated vehicle, and was found urinated on herself, vomited, had severe dehydration, hypoxic brain injury.
Has to be more than 2 hours, because she left her home. The mother left the home at 1:30 p.m. to attend the funeral, and she noticed around 4 p.m. that her daughter was not with the sister. Oh, it's the mother's sister.
Okay.
It's the mother's sister.
Oh, Lord. We have a caller on the line from Cascade. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I can't believe 2 years have passed already for you guys.
2?
Yeah. Talking Points is
it's almost 3.
Yeah. No, Talking Points is probably 2 years old, but yes, caller, we can't believe it either.
But I will say to you, if this is the 200, if this is that would be the 300 and something days, 300 and something days. Let's say this is the 400th edition.
No, I think we passed 5, caller.
Don't worry about it, caller.
We're like close to 7.
As you were saying, caller.
I think this morning was a most informative, professional, balanced, and rewarding conversation for the viewing public. As a viewer, I couldn't tell, it's the one time I'm always looking for faults and weaknesses in the arguments. But I think both of you were on point this morning, and I think as a viewer of this program from day one, I want to commend you all for what you have done this morning.
Thank you, caller.
Because in a sense, you're speaking to the real crux of the problems that confront Trinidad with its crime. And if I may add quickly, I remember once in another hat, I was invited to speak to the Tutor Northern Division Annual Conference. And I made the point that as this, if perchance we have gangsters and gang leaders in the country today, some teachers, I didn't say all teachers, some teachers have failed us. Mm-hmm. Well, boy, those teachers wanted to lynch me. But I stood my ground. I took the mic from the chairman, and I dealt with all those who wanted to lynch me. The reality is this, that the government has to change the rules and regulations. Teaching cannot be a stepping stone.
Yeah.
If you're coming in to teach, you should sign a minimum of a 10-year contract. That is where I stand. And so that you can't leave the teaching service before 10 years. Too many people come in en route to UWI or en route to the United States or wherever, and our children are suffering. That is not to say what we have in school and curriculum is the best thing. So today, I leave you on the note, as I have always said for the last 25 years, the answer to some of our problems, rests in serious compulsory national service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Compulsory national service.
I mean, South Korea has that with regards to their military. Every male between the ages of, I think, You could start as young as 17 and it goes to 38. You need to spend only like a couple of years or so, right? And there's various ways you could do it. If you're a conscientious objector, you don't have to be in a combat role. But it has not hurt the economy. This is a key thing. And women could volunteer as well to give service. It has not hurt the economy. Even entertainment superstars have to do sports athletes, not so much anymore. They have to participate as well. It hasn't hurt the economy.
How about compulsory military training or compulsory disciplinary training?
I mean, I think what the caller said there with regards to national service, because then it's more than just military, right? But then of course now the implementation, I guess that's the Achilles heel. And that has nothing to do, that's no fault of the idea, that is just a fault of our society right now. Implementation of ideas is, where things fall apart.
All right, we have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Sean. Your last caller, I missed that day where he talked about compulsory national service that he has been advocating forever, and I really do mean forever. And I now see Foster Cummings, and they have started some semblance of some talk about national service. Not compulsory, but they talk about national service. My issue with this is that it seems as if that is not something that I think they want to work out how to exempt who they want to exempt, and they can't work that out. That is why we don't have compulsory national service. Compulsory national service can only be of benefit to Trinidad and Tobago. Only of benefit to Trinidad and Tobago, and help us deal with some of these issues that we're dealing with. Another thing, Sean, you talked about that issue with the DPP.
Yeah.
And yeah. You know what? I would implore you to go and look at on Palview and look at the 22nd. I was so taken aback by that Joint Select Committee meeting at that time with Roger Gaspard and Honorary Paul. The 22nd meeting of the JSC of the Joint Select Committee, and Roger Gaspard would answer all the questions that you have asked there.
Right.
What was surprising to me is after that Joint Select Committee, there were no detractors. The Attorney General, the GSC, nobody came out and challenged what Roger Gaspard said on public record on those issues. And I would, if you could go and, sometimes you do those little 5-minute things, that you could pull some of those answers out and put that issue to rest once and for all.
Right.
Thanks. You guys doing really a good job. Keaton, we have been beating up on Sean a couple of times, but Sean seems to have some very nice broad shoulders. And stay up, fellas.
Thank you, caller. It comes to the job, I'm willing to put my opinions out there, and if it's wrong, I take the heat if I make mistakes.
Sean, so who has been beating up on you?
I can't say.
Good morning, caller from Chicones. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning, Professor.
The problem with Tobago and Carnival and Gypsy is there should be never separate agencies in Trinidad and Tobago. It must be a Tobago authority for Trinidad and Tobago. And under that, you have all this. You should have a single comprehensive and cohesive policy for the country. On one matter this morning, you mentioned that the ministry couldn't do anything, or the minister couldn't do anything because that's a cabinet decision. But the way things are supposed to operate in Trinidad, all these things must be discussed and researched by the ministry public servant. And then it would pass through to go to cabinet. So the ministry would have had a say in the beginning. So they should be aware of what is going on. Any questions?
This is with regards to Carnival still, right? Because you're breaking up. So the ministry, which ministry?
With Carnival,
right?
There should be one agent for Trinidad and Tobago.
Right, yeah.
It shouldn't be separate. Follow that?
Caller, we have another call on the line, so I'm gonna have to ask it to end here because you're also breaking up. I think I have the gist of your message, but I don't want to spend the time trying to have any sort of back and forth. We do have a caller waiting from Dabity. I'll respond to that after. Good morning, caller. You on here?
A very pleasant morning to you and your co-host. I want to join with the caller with respect to commendation for you all for having a sustainable and good program over the years, and looking forward to some better programs in the future. Gentlemen, I know that you all are very honest with your callers, and I'm sitting here today and I'm thinking that I'm looking at the way in which the PNM government has managed the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm looking at projected fines in oil and gas. I'm looking at contracts being signed with Venezuela. I'm also looking at the Moody's and the Standard & Poor's ratings. So I want to give the PNM government C+ in governance, and I want to hear your comment on it this morning. And I think that the police is doing an excellent job, and kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. We have another caller. Should we respond now or take the caller first?
Let's take the caller. All right,
good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Shah and Mr. Paul. Calling from Diego Martin. A couple of issues.
Morning.
The TTPS mantra has always been, crime is everybody's business. Remember they're saying that all over the place? I want to ask the Prime Minister why he excluding various stakeholders. And I want to add another person into the list. The opposition put Gary Gifford. I want to ask Miss Karen Nunes Teixeira to be part of that, because she has alluded to frightening things about who is Mr. Big and who's Mr. Small. So I believe she should be part of it. The other issue I'm reading on the newspaper, and apologize if there's a cyber attack on TTST Mobile and if I'm breaking up, on the newspaper today, on the legislative agenda, polygraph testing. I love that, you know. I want 3 high government officials to do polygraph testing too, you know. I want the AG, you remember that Miami business, to see if he's a good boy and he's genuine. I want the Prime Minister, particularly for the immediate issue. And more importantly, for the Marseille at Caesar Ayer issue, I want the Chief Justice. I go on, have a nice day. Food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
We could add Kamla Prasad Bisasi to that list, Devant Maraj to that list, Rural Munilal to that list, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh to that list, and the list goes on and on, caller. So it's not just members of the government.
Although the list of names of the government could be expanded as well.
So just bear that in mind if we're taking a look at polygraph testing. Caller on the line, caller from Dabity, we haven't forgotten you. We're taking this caller from St. Anne's. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I refer back to your earlier conversation about the school disciplinary matrix. As you were speaking, I actually went online because Keaton Shaw's words in the minister's direction was so profoundly upsetting. I actually went on the website to check it out myself. It is there in black and white. There are levels of offenses subdivided into minor and major, everything from dress code violation to assault with a weapon. And there are categories of how they treat with each offense. What happens after a first offense? What happens after a second offense? What happens after a third offense? I don't think it's fair to say the minister does not know about the matrix. It's right there on her ministry's website for all of the public to see and to view and to perhaps comment on if they find it is lacking in any regard. Since both of you have laptops, I was a little surprised that neither of you appear to go on the website to check it yourself. To be able to report back to the public that's tuning into your program. And, well, that's my comment.
Thank you, caller, for your contribution. You have a very fair point. Yeah. I have laptops, and yes, you're absolutely right. I have done my research, and you're right in saying that in my position, I have a duty and a responsibility to educate and inform the public. So I actually hold you in high regard for saying, Keaton, this is what you should have done, and this is how you could have done it better. It's a very good point. In fact, I have it. I know about it. I should have spoken about it. I think I just got so caught up in the situation, and we went so extensively, and we looked at the topic so broadly, that it is my fault that I probably lacked that contributing factor. But I don't necessarily go against the comments I made in response to the Minister of Education's commentary, because even if the disciplinary guidelines and matrix is available via the website, that still does not tell me that she's actually aware of it.
Yes, that's the point that I want to make.
So as much, caller, as you've made a very fair point, and I take my fault and responsibility for not being a bit more promotional in terms of the educational aspect. Again, I stand by what I say.
More importantly, when I said it might not necessarily, all of these problems might not necessarily be only on the minister, you said, well, okay, but on the PR front, and it's true, the minister is the point man for whatever ministry they are the line minister of or junior minister of. Well, then they're not the point man, but you know what I mean. They could still be potentially a spokesperson for when presented in that capacity. And at the end of the day, if she wants to be thought of as having knowledge over the situation, she has to express it. It can't just be assumed, right? So it's a PR issue as well, because not everybody is going to check the ministry's website. And then there are times when public available information is not going to be, you know, so readily available. So I understand also what you said, caller. That was an oversight on both of our parts. But I understand why Keaton said what he said, because how she dealt with it, the communication side of it. And like I said, when I brought up the fact that Cabinet runs a lot of the decision makings for the government in general, whichever ministry it is, but the minister is still the point person to communicate the issues. And to some extent, if you just leave it there, well, there's a matrix. Well, that's nice, but explain the matrix. And more importantly, when we have certain cases like 20 suspensions, we can't necessarily know how the matrix was applied to the student, right? To some extent, because we don't know what he was suspended for. And that's part of the concern. And it is what it is. But to be fair, for transparency and objectivity, we should have presented the matrix.
If anybody gets the opportunity, go to moe.gov.tt and just simply look it up. Or you can just simply Google Disciplinary Matrix, Ministry of Education. I have the document right there in front of me, right? There you go. It's actually 40 pages long. So if you get the opportunity, please read it. And surely enough, on another edition of Talking Point, we will cover it. But I take the caller's point because only are we going to do the show.
And at the end of the day, I like that when callers, you know, catch us, add to the conversation. Did we not do something that we should have done? This is great, because at the end of the day, the point is to get to the objective truth, not to be right. In as much as I'm still defending Keaton's position, I'm still acknowledging that the caller, you were right to say what you said.
Anyway, question is I would ask you, caller, is whether or not, and you've read, well, I'm assuming that you've read the 40 pages of the document.
No, I think he said he now looked it up just to see if it's available.
Okay, good. So
I think.
I'm just wondering, actually, because they have a lot of statistics. The first 20 pages are statistics, right? So just bear that in mind, which is good information, good data. But apart from that, I would ask you, caller, whether or not you still think that this matrix is working, or whether or not you think this matrix is proving fruitful, or whether or not you think this matrix is actually, if anything at all, faulty in regards to the education system. But to the caller from Dabody,
yes.
What he was asking, and it's a fair point, I think there's been a lot of focus in recent times in regards to where the government is going to get its money and how it's going to get this money, as is any government's priority, funding for everything. But governance is a matter of many different areas and many different responsibilities. If I take a look at the distribution of wealth, or just simply break it down, the expense or the priorities of our expense in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know, boy. C plus seems like such a high grade in that particular instance.
Oh, is C plus? I thought you said B plus.
I heard C plus, and I'm assuming it's C plus. I don't know if the directors heard C plus or B plus. You could correct us if that is the case. But I find that's a high mark, especially in relation to the distribution of wealth, the management of the actual economy in terms of expenses, and the funds that are available. Because minister could stand up in the budget and say, this is the funds that we're going to make available. We never are told exactly what is available. And that's another problem. So if you go and take one example of a report that was issued on Sunday in regards to an HDC project, and this is something we were debating off here. We don't have much time to get into the details, but that alone tells me that here in Trinidad and Tobago, we are so stupid in how we manage our money. We are so stupid in how we prioritize.
Inefficient.
And we are so ignorant. Nah, inefficient is just blanketed in nicely with sprinkles and we are stupid.
I tried.
Imagine you have a contractor, and this is just one example, contractor I'm not going to name now, who has been flagged by an independent audit from an independent contractor hired by the Ministry of Works and Transport. After the project is complete, this contractor is flagged for faulty works and bad foundation, yet this contractor, following that report, is still receiving contracts from said ministry.
No, from works contracts,
right?
As opposed
So,
to HDC. Well,
no.
Is that the same ministry?
No, it's a different ministry.
Well, it's different projects.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you have a contractor, it doesn't matter if you...
Yeah.
So I am just simply suggesting, guys, listen, if you want to give the government a C plus in terms of, all right, this is where we're exploring in terms of how we're going to bring in money, fine, no problem. What are we doing with the money we have?
Okay. I'll just say this quick. Maybe he was good when taking works contracts, and then for whatever reason they thought he could do public infrastructure, then that translates to housing. Not necessary. I mean, we'll see how that unfolds. I'll just say this. With regards to the grade in the government, I understand the caller's sentiment. Mariano Brown was on this show. He did say that Column might have been the only one that would have been able to successfully keep costs low and cut them because of our reduction in revenue. And I get that. The thing is, we don't know what other people have done in that situation because our most recent history leading up to 2015, government was flush with cash. And we had a lot of grand plans from repeated administrations. Dollar for dollar was one up by gate, etc., etc. And then, of course, the People's Partnership spent a fair amount of money on all sorts of things as well. And then the PNM comes and they have to deal with this. And we can't necessarily compare them to their predecessors. Do we think that they did a good job? I honestly think that anybody from the current political landscape or most recent political landscape would have more or less done a similar job. Maybe a little bit worse. I don't necessarily think that much better, if at all. So as to letter grade, I agree with Peter. C plus might be a little too high. Depends on how your scale is, but it might be a little too high. Maybe I'll go as low as a C minus or a D plus. I'm more comfortable with the D plus. But folks...
By the way, caller from St. Anne's. This matrix don't say nothing about 20 suspensions. It lists the offenses, but nothing about 20 suspensions.
Oh, Lord. Keep on.
I look at things holistically.
All right.
I thank you for having me on the program today, and I thank you for the commentary.
Same thing.
No matter what, it's good and okay to disagree. And Sean?
That's not the thing.
Oh, God, never finished. I'd like to be a little... Fine. Today is a good day to have a good day. Sean, I'll see you on Thursday morning, my friend.
Okay, bye-bye, folks. I will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN